was one day I was doing some work, I was studying, and all of a sudden I heard a voice. It was like many voices, women's voices. And they said, "Sister, we're waiting for you. Sister, we're waiting for you. We're waiting for you." And I um started just weeping, like, because it was this feeling of deep longing. Like I could feel, oh my gosh, that's my tribe. Like they literally said, "We're waiting for you. We need you to come find us."
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm Jan Behringer, and my co-hosts Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose are here. Say hi.
Hi.
Hello. Today is another very special episode. We are celebrating the birth and life of Julie Dean Richards today. Hooray! Happy birthday, Julie.
Thank you. I'm so excited because I have a summer birthday. I never was one of those kids who got to celebrate it in class and like pass around the cupcakes and, do that stuff. So it's fun to be celebrated on my podcast in this way.
Yeah. We're going to celebrate you and then you're going to send us cupcakes. Just kidding. No, we'll send you cupcakes.
No, I will. I'm going to send you all cupcakes. Ding, 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 ding. Because I'm making you listen to my class.
So, Julie, we're going to interrogate you for your birthday. How does that feel? We're going to learn all about Julie and her life and the things that you're passionate about, right, Julie? Which is so many things. And I think it's a lot of things that people are listening are also passionate about.
My plan today is to tell everyone my wild theories about my life and all the things I've been putting together. So I guess we could just begin at the beginning of where did these wild theories come from?
Where did these wild theories come from? Tell us, Julie.
All right, here we go. So we have talked on this podcast before a little bit. I think in episode 1, we each kind of gave a little bit about our story. How did we come to be in this place that we are now? Why did we start the podcast? And for me, I haven't shared as much in detail of how I came here, but also what that's led to now. Because, this whole episode is going to be what I would call Julie Midrash. And Midrash is when it's usually applied to a rabbi when a rabbi kind of just goes off the rails and tells all their own opinions about stuff. And so this is me, my Midrash, telling you all my opinions. And the start of this from the beginning starts with what I call my call from the goddess. So some people might have heard some of this story before, but before law school, I had been starting to learn a little bit about like the concepts of polarity and femininity and starting to look into the feminine a little bit deeper. I'd had kind of a deep realization and experience with my daughter going to come into the world. I had a really strong spiritual experience with her. But it was after her birth and like during the time of law school, like I've said, where I started researching really deeply about the feminine, researching really deeply at, the possibility of a goddess and what does that look like and how can we find her and, and where is she? And one day after, I think it was my first year of law school, I went to a salt cave and I had what I call my call from the goddess. And she came to me very literally. It was almost like a vision. It's like that in between time, like you're in between sleep and waking and reality. And she asked me to walk with her in a garden. And as we're walking in the garden, the first thing that she said to me was, "Your body is a temple." And at the time I was kind of like, okay, yeah, so like, so what? Why is that even important? And she started to speak to me about things that had been missing for women. And she just kept talking about like the body is a temple. The body is so important. And she told me, you've been wanting to learn about these mysteries. Like you've been wanting to learn about these things and you've been learning about them. But there's a lot more for you to learn. And there's a lot more of this tapestry for you to weave. And during this vision, she sat me down in a courtyard and she was weaving this giant tapestry on a loom. And I just want to preface this by saying, even though I had been researching femininity and the goddess, I actually hadn't really gotten to symbols yet. I was fairly new. I had been more looking at like, what is polarity? I learned a little bit about the wheel of the year. I was very tiptoey at this point. I had a different kind of view of what this could be. So a lot of these symbols, a lot of the things that happened to me, I had no idea that she would be connected with. Literally no idea. And so she told me that she was the weaver of the sky and that she was weaving everything that is now, everything that was, and everything that will be. And she told me that she wanted me to become a weaver. She wanted me to become a weaver and weave things back together. And she said that a lot of her daughters had forgotten. They'd forgotten the old ways. They had forgotten who they are. And a lot of things about her had been forgotten. And so after that experience with her, there were like so many symbols in it that now I'm like, oh my gosh, she was showing me all these things that are connected with her. And I had no idea about them. I didn't know that the word weaver was so connected with the goddess. I had no idea that that is like one of her epitaphs. I didn't know how important the body was. Like I didn't know anything about embodiment at that point in time and how important that was for the feminine. Like I didn't know any of that. And so I kind of got that call, I want you to become a weaver and I want you to help women remember the old ways. And I just was like, what are the old ways? What does that even mean? What does it mean to be a weaver? And so then I started to search in earnest to try to figure out what it means to be a weaver. And for me, I think a lot of my weaving is weaving together concepts, ideas, and trying to help people understand that although everything appears separate, everything is actually deeply connected together. And that a lot of our differences in spirituality and religion and thought patterns, even like our differences ideologically, are actually just all one thread. We're actually just one giant tapestry. And so for me, I had to kind of learn this step by step. And so I'm kind of going to try to help everybody understand step by step what the journey has been like for me and kind of answer this question of what are the old ways?
It's so cool. You found the goddess in a cave. Like that's really,
In
really
a
cool.
cave, right? Isn't
In a
that
cave.
crazy?
Mhm.
Literally in a cave, in a salt cave. Yeah. Isn't that
Which actually brings me to my original point. When did you fall in the hole and go deep into the earth and find the goddess?
true? It's so true. Yes, I did fall in the hole. I mean, that was me tripping into it. I was slowly dancing around the hole. I saw the rabbit go down the hole, and then I just totally fell into it when I had that vision. So it was a really cool experience.
Do you have anything else that you want to say about the mother?
Yeah, I think I would like to say, like, because I see the goddess as a mother, and I think for me, what I have learned, which is very opposite of like the way that I grew up and very opposite of what I had believed for a long time. But the more that you look culture to culture, you start to see that the mother is everything. She's at the center of everything. There's something called parthenogenesis, which is only present in female beings, is this ability to reproduce singly without a masculine companion. And to me, I think that oftentimes in esoteric texts and when we read about things like a virgin birth, that really applies to this feminine principle of the goddess. Like she is the parthenogenesis, right? She births everything. She's the center of everything. And so a lot of my journey was trying to see her at the center. And I started to see her at the center by exploring things that I hadn't explored before, like the elements and symbols, feminine symbols, things like that.
Yeah, tell us about the elements and the symbols of the goddess.
So when I say that I started researching her and looking into everything about her, I remember thinking like, how do you find all this stuff out? How the heck do you learn all of this stuff? And I actually think there are so many resources now, but 5 or 6 years ago, there were much less resources. And so for me, because that had come to me very symbolically, I basically had to look for symbols. Like I realized, okay, where can I see things come up again and again and again? I was very fortunate to have been connected to some people who had done a little bit more research than I had, people like Mandy Green, people like Dave Butler. I mean, I hadn't stumbled onto Dave or like made a connection with him yet, but I did know Mandy. And for people who don't know Mandy Green, she has a master's from Duke in theology. Her whole thesis is around Mary Magdalene, who she is, the bloodline of Christ, and all of that kind of stuff. And so I talked to her about what had happened to me. I was like, I don't know where to go. I have no idea who to talk to about this. I've seen some of your stuff and I'm hoping you'll take pity on me and like help me out a little bit and tell me some things. And she did. She took pity on me. She did a full Zoom call with me and we ended up talking for about like 3 hours about this. And she was the one who put me on to this idea that everything was symbolic, like everything in my dream. And I had thought about that. Like, obviously, it was symbolism, but she gave me kind of the breadcrumbs that I needed to be able to start searching and put me onto some dissertations about weaving and what does that look like? Like, why is the weaver connected to the goddess and how old cultures, old shamanic cultures, and this is not just Celtic cultures, but we can see it prominently in Celtic shamanism, always talked about the goddess as a weaver and as a spider, as mother spider, lots of times that she weaved the earth and that's how we came to be and how that's actually connected to Proverbs and to wisdom. And that talking of in the beginning, wisdom was with God and wisdom weaved the earth. And that's the original translation of that word and how she is connected to all of these symbols. So from there, I just got this idea of, okay, so if I can learn, so much about her from one symbol, what other symbols do I see in these other cultures that prominently have goddess figures? If anyone knows me, they know like I research symbols of the goddess. I have about 90 symbols, divine feminine symbols, which I only knew, at first I was like, are there symbols? Like what are divine feminine symbols? What does that mean? I don't know. Where could you find them? And so I went from maybe knowing like one to then knowing 10 and to then making it, okay, now you can see her everywhere. You can see her in all these cultures. I've gathered over 90 symbols of her and each one has taught me something about her. I didn't realize at the time that these symbols were asking me to embody them to really learn about her. At first, it was all intellectual for me. It was all this intellectual search of, okay, what does this mean? Okay, a pomegranate is symbolic of the divine feminine. All right, that's connected to fertility. There's lots of seeds in a pomegranate. Great. It's red like blood and like women bleed every month. But I eventually started to learn more about being embodied and embodiment. And I think the first thing that really got me into embodiment, which is not usually where people start, but for me, it was the elements. And mostly because I'm an astrologer, right? Like we're astrologers. It's what we do. The elements, make up our charts. And in another episode, we've done an elements episode for anyone who, is new to this. You can go back and listen to it. It's really good. Since then, I have done way more research about the elements. So I'm like, I have so much more to say. We have to do a part 2. Yes, I have been learning a lot about air, Jayanne, all about air. Because I remember in the elements episode, we were talking about air. And then you were like, does anyone else have anything else to say about air? And we were like, quiet. And you were like, all right, fine, we'll move on. And I was like, oh no, I got to learn a lot more about air. So that's been part of my mission. And I feel like I'm learning so much more about it because there's the least amount of air in my chart. So let me bring this back to embodiment and the goddess. I started to look at my chart broken up, right, into the elements and start to dig into them and realize like, what does it feel like to have a lot of earth? And at first it was, what does it feel like to have a lot of earth in your chart? And then it was, how does your chart correspond to your body? And how does it feel to have a lot of earth in your body? Everything, in the old times and original astrologers way back when would talk about you are made up of the 4 elements. Like the belief was you are literally made up of a certain amount of each of these 4 elements. And that is reflected in your star chart, your astrological chart. And I really started to take that to heart and kind of be like, okay, what does it feel like to have this in your body? What does it feel like to let more air into your body, more breath into your body? What does it feel like to let more water into your body, more intuition, more flow? And I started to realize that these elements were so deeply connected to everything we see, everything we hear, and that in a way, and I'm not like trying to be anti-science when I say this, but I actually think science reflects this rather well, but that everything is really made up of the 4 elements. We're all made up of the 4 elements, and the 5th element is spirit. The 5th element comes back to her, which brought me back to symbols, because if anyone's seen a pentagram, ooh, the scary pentagram. Oh, it's so scary. Sorry. I just, when people are scared of pentagrams, I'm like, you literally know nothing about the history of pentagrams. Anyway, so if you go back to the
Preach,
pentagram,
Julie, preach.
I'm on it. I'm on my soapbox. I'm here for it. But the pentagram is the 4 elements and then the 5th element of spirit, right? It's a super feminine symbol because it all goes back to the center. And what is the center? The center is the goddess, right? The center is nature. The center is the wheel of the year. The center, like, why do we talk about Mother Earth? She's there with us. She's guiding us. She's with us. And so once I started to understand that these symbols were more than just intellectual, that they were something that I could embody, I started to get some clues about, okay, maybe this has to do with what the old ways are, because I'm starting to kind of weave a little bit of that into my practice and my thought processes of like, okay, maybe the old ways is coming back to nature. Maybe it's coming back to these elements. Maybe it's understanding what's inside of you. And that was really helpful to see her. And maybe embodying these symbols will help me to understand her and understand the old ways. So I started to embody things like the symbol of the dragon, which was really fun for me to embody and to understand. Like the dragon, for people who don't know, the dragon is a feminine symbol. It's everywhere. It's connected to the serpent, which is also a feminine symbol. To embody the lotus, like what does the lotus look like? What does it feel like in your body to understand the lotus? And one of the symbols that just really stuck out to me that will connect to this history piece is the tree, because the tree is everywhere, literally everywhere, every religion. I'm serious. Like every religion, every spirituality, every part of the continent, everyone talks about a tree of life. And the tree is the divine feminine. The tree is the mother. She's there. She's a tree. She gives fruit. And you can see this cross culturally. And so this is where I started to like connect some dots between the stories that we've been told and the history and how these different belief systems come together. And it was at this point that, okay, just so you know, like I'm in law school for a vast majority of this, okay? So like I'm supposed to be reading my books and doing my things, and instead I'm like researching ancient civilizations and like what they mean and what they think. And I am trying to figure out how to have this feminine flow of like working through law school. And I really do believe I was blessed by the goddess, because like this is the work she wanted me to do, that I could put, this sounds so bad, I could put the minimal amount of effort that was necessary into law school and always come out on top on the other side, like as long as I was doing this work. Does that make sense? Yeah, like as long as I was researching these things about the feminine and believing in the flow, it didn't matter if I didn't read everything that the cases, like for some reason, I always knew the answer. For some reason, like everything just flowed for me. For some reason, I would end up, taking my finals and I would end up on top in the top percentages. I didn't ever have to worry about that. When other people were studying for hours and hours, I felt like I was just blessed with, an open mind, because I needed to go on this journey. I needed to learn these things. And I feel like that is also the power of the feminine. The feminine is flow like that. All you need to know. Go ahead, Kaylee.
It sounds like you also were opening up to and being tutored in a different way of learning that doesn't require the grind. Like that even topics related to law can be almost distilled rather than read or memorized, but that it just, I mean, people joke like, if I fall asleep on my textbook, will I learn it by osmosis? Which makes absolutely no sense. But that's the joke. And it's like, oh, actually, there's a little bit of truth in that if you are in alignment with truth and you are following the path that is meant for you. So I think that's, I don't know, that's really powerful and it's really beautiful. And it almost sounds like there's a part of you that's like feels bad that you did so well when other people were working quote unquote hard and you weren't, but you were doing a different kind of hard work. You were doing this hard work of embodiment, of internalizing truth. And also you were pregnant. Like that's hard work. And so you were putting in the work. It just didn't look like other people putting in the work. And you were reaping the benefits of the work. So I just wanted to point that out to you in case you missed that part.
Thank you, Kaylee. Yes, and I do feel bad about it. Sometimes I do feel bad. And my husband has this joke that I'm the most efficient learner. He's like, Julie's the most efficient learner. She can put in the most minimal amount of effort and get the best results out of her minimal effort. And I guess I wanted to showcase this a little bit because I do feel bad because I'm like, oh, people are going to think I was a bad student or like it's my Capricorn moon, right? That's like, people are going to think I'm bad for like, I didn't work hard enough for it or whatever. But I do want to showcase the blessings of it because I think there's so much fear around following a different path. There's so much fear around learning about this kind of stuff. I guess I just wanted to show that you will be blessed. So like in Proverbs, when it is talking about the goddess, and people are going to be like, Proverbs talks about the goddess. I'm like, ugh, go back to episode 13. You can learn about it there.
Go back, listen to the whole podcast over again.
Listen to episode 13. And I think it's Proverbs 8. It says, those who follow her are blessed with great happiness. They are blessed. If you drink her wine and eat her bread, your life will be blessed and it will be blessed with ease, comfort, happiness. Those are all promises about learning about her, following her, being with her. And that's in the Bible, people. Okay. So just look it up. Anyway, I just felt like I was connecting in these ways that I hadn't before and learning. And it was one day I was doing some work. I was trying to get a bunch of stuff done. I was studying and all of a sudden I heard a voice. It wasn't just one voice. It was like many voices, women's voices. And they said, "Sister, we're waiting for you. Sister, we're waiting for you. We're waiting for you." And I um started just weeping, like crying because it was this feeling of deep longing. Like I could feel like, oh my gosh, that's my tribe. Those are the women waiting. Like they literally said, "We're waiting for you. We need you to come find us." Like, and it was just this feeling like homesickness, you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm waiting for home. And I cannot deny that that happened to me. It was so visceral. Like a lot of my experiences happened to me this way because I am such a science-based, grounded, show me the proof person that I think I needed some physical, visceral experiences. I also have a lot of earth in my chart. And when you have a lot of earth, sometimes you need a physical experience to happen to you. And these voices came then very strongly, but they also continued to come every once in a while. Like every once in a while, I would hear the voices of the women crying to me, like, "Sister, we're waiting for you." And I would feel the longing, the sickness. And I was like, what is that? Who are you? That was my question. Like, who are you? Where is this coming from? I don't know who you are, but I'm going to find you, right? Like I'm going to find out. And I felt like a lot of it was the women that the goddess had talked about, right? Like, I need you to teach your sisters, teach my daughters, the old ways to remember. So then I went through, we'll just touch on this briefly because like I said, you can go back to episode 13. You can go back to lots of conclusions and episodes we've done. but I started to pull a lot of threads. I started to unwind a lot of things biblically and stumbled onto people like Margaret Barker. I had already talked about Mandy. Mandy has a lot of this kind of stuff. And so I already knew that biblically there was a lot of hidden feminine. There's a lot of veiled feminine. I knew there were a lot of issues and edits in the Bible. I knew that the goddess had been edited out and that it's there in the original texts. And we're seeing that more and more. And when Stella comes back on the podcast, we will talk about this at length. If you're very interested in this, just like that episode is coming, there's other episodes. But I want to pull on one thread. The one thread I want to pull on is the name Asherah, because Asherah is a play on words in many ways. Asherah can mean happiness. That's why she gives happiness. It can mean the blessed, the happiness. So like when Jesus is talking about blessed are the meek, blessed are the humble, he's actually saying the word Asherah. It's a play on her name, Asherah, blessed. She's blessed, the blessings you get from Asherah. So you'll also see that Asherah means like a grove of trees. She is the goddess of trees. And that's where we find these pillar figurines of her at trees. And at this time, so I think it was like my last year of law school or just shortly after that, I just kept hearing the words in my head, the tree, the tree, the trees, the groves, the trees. And I knew that was a symbol of the mother, and I'd seen it in all these other places. And I'd heard the tales, like I'd done this study and searching about like the bloodline of Jesus and how it leads to the Celtic Isles and all this stuff and lots of other places. All of a sudden, a picture in my head about I had this picture in my head about the trees and this one tree in particular. And I saw somewhere online, it just popped up this word, this tree, and the word druids. And I just was like, druids? Oh, what are druids? Druids have to do with trees and druids. And I started looking into how the druids had their whole religion. They're literally one of the oldest religions, if not the oldest religion, at least in Europe, the oldest religion that we have. And their whole religion centers around the goddess, and their religion centers around the trees and these sacred groves. They call them sacred groves, the groves and the trees. And all of a sudden my brain was like, I need to talk to a druid. So I started listening to druid, like I started to find podcasts about it, and I had been fumbling around with it for kind of like a year. And then most recently, I decided finally I'm going to connect with Obod, which is the order of druids and all the people, and see if my wild theories are correct. I'm going to actually enroll in their mystery school. And so I did. So now I'm in a mystery school to become a bard, you guys. This is what I do with my life. I enroll in mystery schools, and I try to find out, all these things. And it has exceeded my expectations. I'm emailing some druids who are much older druids than I am about like coming on the podcast and talking about druidry.
That's exciting.
The deep connections. But one thing I have seen is that, I don't know, for me, it's basically helped me strengthen that thread of this is the center of everything. This is part of the way that everything is connected, is that she is the tree. And a lot of people don't know that Druidry extends at its height. It was all the way out to Turkey. So all of Eastern Europe was the Druids, and the Druids had lots of mystery schools. Sorry, Jan, you look like you want to say a thing.
I'm just loving this. This is so cool. I didn't know you were in mystery school. How come you didn't tell us this?
I thought I did. Maybe I didn't.
She did at some point.
I think I
did. She did tell us at some point. Or yes. Because I remember saying like, oh, I was looking into doing that too. I can't believe it.
Yes, I'm in the mystery school. And we'll talk a lot more in our Druid episode about Druids and why and how Druidry is not like a religion. Like you can be come from any kind of background in religion and be a Druid. It's not like you have to leave behind anything. So the Druids are these people who they use nature. They are animist. And we've talked about what this means before, but they are people who look at the trunk of a tree and they can use that to help them understand what is coming, ask questions of it. They can see like fox in the forest and they have a meaning attached to seeing that fox in the forest and all those kinds of things. But they have these cave temples, and the cave temples symbolize the mother and going into the womb and coming out of the womb. And where did we see that, right? Like we see the Druid culture, as we know, go all the way out to Turkey. But my thought was, well, if it extended to Turkey, could it not have extended all the way down into Egypt and Israel and all these other places? We see all of this. The tree is important no matter what. And so at one point, I guess one of my wild theories is, of course, all of these places were connected by the goddess. Everything was connected by the goddess and connected by this idea of trees and these mystery schools, because they had mystery schools that ran all the way from Turkey, and the biggest one was in the British Isles. But this also connected to a lot of my theories about the connections with the Knights Templar. And I believe the Knights Templar were trying to carry what Christ is really trying to talk about in the Bible. They are really carrying that religion with Mary Magdalene, that belief system, out into the world and get connected again, with the Druids. Because Mary, if you know anything about Mary Magdalene lore, the lore is that she's actually Celtic. That's why she has red hair. And that probably she comes from a Druidic tradition. And I mean, no one has ever said that to me directly, that she comes from a Druidic tradition. So that is also my midrash, that she comes from the Druidic tradition, that she's not just a random lady in the Celtic Isles. She's an actual priestess who comes from the Druids and gets connected. And I think my wild theory also is that she and Jesus meet in a mystery school in the Groves in Britain. And that's how they get connected. And so the Knights Templar, who are kind of carrying these deeper esoteric thoughts, these mysteries, they are coming back, and in the end they get driven up into Scotland and back reunited with what's left of the Druidic tradition, because Ireland has a really strong culture around this also. Of course, when the Romans come in, they kind of try to stamp a lot of this out, and they try to blend it with the Catholic Church, and they try to blend everything together. And so the Knights Templar are preserving a lot of those, a lot of things about ascension and masculine and feminine polarity and coming together. They are preserving that, and they end up having to go to Scotland. And so my wild theory is, I kind of believe, even though tarot is very, very old, my belief is that that's where we get a solidification of tarot. That's where you get a solidification of and birth of things like other pagan traditions that we see, even like Wicca. Like the birth of Wicca, I think, comes out of this, and a lot of that sacred knowledge, because the Druids really had to go underground or they had to be consolidated. And so I think that's why we see so much there. That's why there's still so much magic. If you go up there, you can see the stones. I was just talking to our friend Jocelyn Peterson yesterday about this, how last time she went to Roslyn Chapel, which is up there, and there's a big stone out there. And when they went by the stone, her husband, Paul, started to get this giant headache. He just had the biggest headache, just such a physical reaction. And the docent that was there told them, that stone used to be inside Roslyn Chapel, but we had to move it outside because so many people complained of physical issues, like headaches, feeling like lines, right? Like that's what I think. People are like feeling the ley lines, feeling the power that's left over there, but it causes headaches, it causes like physical sickness, all of those kinds of things, because it's just so much magnetism there. And that's why, like, if you go there, all those stones, those old stones that are left there have that deeper magic. And so we kind of get this birth of traditions like Wicca and paganism, and bringing together this culture that is surrounded by the mother tree, right? That all comes back to the mother tree. And the 13 months. Okay, I'm going to tell a few things for people who don't know this. There used to be 13 months of the year. It followed the moon cycle. Think about like how October, Oct is actually 8. Okay, so, but we say it's the 10th month. So then you can kind of see how this happened. And Deca, right, is 10. So like December is really the 10th month. So we used to have 13 months, and we used to follow that moon cycle perfectly and follow those full moons. And the Druids were super connected to this, and they assigned a tree to each month. So they are so focused on the trees. Their whole astrology system is all about trees and which kind of tree are you and what the trees tell us and like broken branches. And so it's beautiful to see that in all of these older cultures, here she is. She is at the center, and here she is coming together and winding together each of these pieces. And that all religions, even Christianity and Abrahamic religions, come back to the tree, and they all come back to this. It's just that a lot of that has been hidden from us. And I guess maybe that's not new news to you all, but it just has been a really cool experience to see that foundation, to see that there's actual legitimacy to the tree and her being at the center and the cave being at the center, and that, you know, each of these belief systems, which are spread out, are actually coming back together.
Hi, it's Kaylee. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you already know about the feminine Powerline. Black Moon Lilith, the Eve Point, that axis in your chart that holds both the exiled feminine and the desiring feminine. You know the words, but there's a difference between knowing the words and actually turning the light on. The Feminine Powerline self-paced course is where that happens. It's not a lecture, it's an experience. Guided journeys, somatic reflections, and a full reference library of interpretations for your exact placements, so you can sit with your own chart and actually feel what's been living there. Feel it and reclaim it. Women who've gone through the course say the same thing. I didn't expect it to hit that deep. The first 25 students get founding student pricing at $97. After that, it's $147. You can find the link to check it out and to purchase in the show notes of this episode. If the Feminine Powerline has been calling you, this is where you answer.
That's so good. No, it's so good. Yeah, there's so much that you've learned through just going through the process and following the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I mean, then you go back and take these moments of reflection and say, oh, look at how all of these things actually have to do with each other. And even though I was just following the next thing, I can see these through lines of why we started here and how we got to where we are, which is really, really cool. And by we, I mean just Julie, because this journey might look different for everybody. But yeah, it's really, really cool for you to like fast track us through that process.
Well, hopefully it's kind of making sense a little bit.
Mhm.
I know it's a little all over the place, and if you're new to this, it might sound crazy, but hopefully you can see the threads that I'm pulling through and how things are coming together. One thing I did want to bring back into this is all of these religions is about using the elements, right? And about using the rise and fall of nature. Like I said, everything comes back to the goddess because everything comes back to nature. Everything comes back to the cycles. Everything comes back to the elements. Having those 4 elements within us and these embodiment pieces, and how we have our own cycles.
Well, weaving connects all of that, right? Like weaving is the piece that you use everything at your disposal or at your fingertips, all your resources to create, right? Weaving is the pathway. Weaving shows you how you got where you got, because there's a line to that. You know exactly how things worked through, because if you've ever crocheted or knitted anything, like you have to know where you've been, and that's what weaving does. So if you take the elements, I mean, you're reverse engineering, like what we actually call witchcraft, right? Is you take the elements and you weave them, and whatever representations, and you weave them, all of the symbols, and you weave them. And most fibers are made from bark. Not necessarily bark, but pieces of plant material. And a lot of them are from the inner layers of bark. So when we're talking about nature and weaving, this is all how we can design our femininity. If that makes sense. Yeah. This is beautiful.
Yes, thank you, Jan. Thank you for piecing that through, because there's been just so many experiences. And don't worry, I'm going to come back to the voices. I promise. I will not leave you hanging. on the voices. But yeah, it's been like this experiential piece. And thanks for coming back to that, because I've been trying to, for me, this is all starts with the mystery of what are the old ways and how do I weave those together? How do I reintroduce that to women? And I would not say that I am done with my search. I don't think you're ever done with your search. And a big part of this is one of the things that the goddess said to me was, you have to live it. Like, you need to live it so that you can teach it. And I think I have done a little bit of living it and a lot of not living it and trying to come back to living it. And a lot of the psychological threading. But a lot of these pieces, had to be physical, experiential experiences for me. And, one of those that came through that really created the whole framework. When we talk about the heroine's journey for me, I know, and I just want to say this because this can happen to anybody. This can happen to everyone listening. Like, you have the power to have experiences like this. I want everyone to know that. I also wanted to say that a lot of things that have happened to me, I find out later there is, already a theory on that, or someone's already talked about that before, or it's already been written, or other people have already talked about these symbols somewhere else. And I did not have access to that information, but it came to me through my own experience. And I just want people to know, like, that's possible for you. And so the heroine's journey was like that for me. I hadn't read a book about it. I didn't know anything about it. It literally started with me going on this journey, like I said, researching a lot of these things, and then having a visceral experience with the goddess in the form and shape of Hecate. We'll talk about that more on another episode. But I had this really physical, visceral experience of being asked to fall into a cave, essentially, being asked to be dropped into a labyrinth, a literal, like a very literal labyrinth, and then seeing things as I'm trying to go through this labyrinth, having tasks and seeing things pop up in my real life corresponding to what's happening to me. So a lot of this came through dreams, and then things would happen in the physical world that I'd be like, how in the world does this happen? Like, I would tell Kaylee and Jayan this, and both of you would be like, that's insane. There's no way. Because I'd be like, am I going crazy? Is this actually me going crazy? And you guys would be like, it happened. There's no way it didn't, happen. That can happen for you all. Everyone listening too. I just want you to know that. And once I started to put together the framework of the heroine's journey, then it was like, oh, by the way, there's a whole book about this. And the book says all the things. And oh, by the way, these other people have talked about this. Oh, no way. So that's been part of it. And that can be part of people's lived experience. But for me, just so people know, it's not like I wasn't afraid. It's a real fear. Like, am I actually a bad person? Am I actually evil? Am I listening to these bad things happening to me? And it's so interesting because all that comes of it is good things, the fruits of it are good. And so I guess by their fruits, you shall know them. And the fruits of this have been, wow, amazing introspection, learning, overcoming fears, feeling freedom, like myself, deep spiritual connection and happiness and all of those kinds of things. So I think that's one thing I want to put out there. Do you guys have any comments you want to say?
Just on that fruit mentality, it's by their fruits you will know them. And I can't, that has been like one thing that has driven me so much in this very unsure, unsteady experience, because there's a lot of like fear mongering against feeling better, because there's this, oh, well, if you feel better, then, you're being tricked because you're a woman and you're stupid. Or just anyone feeling better is like obviously a trick. And sometimes short term, yes, but if it's truly a fruit, like if it comes from within, then it doesn't go away. And so why wouldn't you want to feel better long term and feel more freedom and feel more rooted and feel more like happy about yourself? And you don't need someone else to tell you that you're okay, because you just feel that way all the time. So not that it's bad for other people to tell you, but sometimes we get wrapped up in the only way to be validated is externally, and it ends up, when you go through some of these processes, just it comes from within, and it's not like, I don't need that. It's just, it doesn't occur to you anymore. why don't I have that? Those kinds of things are truly fruits. And it's yes, I just wanted to highlight this of like, by the fruit, you will know it. And that is okay to trust it. And it's okay to ask weird questions. That's not evil.
Well, how many of us like doubt ourselves? I feel like we're so trained to doubt our intuition and to doubt, and we're very trained to be, like you said, like, oh, like this is deception. You must be being deceived. You must be like, this must be evil. And I do think that's a good point, Jan, because I do feel like fruits are long lasting fruits. And so, is it fleeting happiness or is it long lasting freedom, understanding, joy, all those kinds of things? And that's been something I've had to measure. And also, I think for me, I had to take this path and have such real physical experiences with it so that I wouldn't like doubt myself even more, right? So I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, this never happened. This couldn't have happened. That's why patterns are important, because if you see the pattern, you know what is coming. Is it a good pattern? Is it helpful for you? Is this the pattern? And for me, I see these patterns in all the belief systems, right? It's like being able to pull that thread and see the through line. Wow, I see the pattern here. I see the pattern here. The pattern's here. It's all the same thing, It's all coming up over and over again. This is part of the reason we haven't talked about this before, but I think people get really scared of archetype work because, like, for me, having the heroine's journey come through and this archetype of Hecate, scary. Like, she's like a scary woman. Like my friend Megan, when we first talked about this, she was like, Hecate is so scary. And it's so funny because when I started to work through the archetype of her, I had no preconception of her because I didn't even know who she was. I had never seen her. I didn't like know anything about her. And so my experience with her, like, I was so surprised. I was like, oh, she's scary. I guess she's scary. I didn't know she was scary because I didn't have a preconception before any of this happened. And to me, she's actually not scary. She's there to catch you. She's going to take all your goodness and all your darkness. Like, she's there to give you a hug when like you feel worthless and no one is there for you. She will take all the dark parts of you and help you alchemize them, integrate them and alchemize them so that you can become who you truly are and you don't have to keep hurting yourself over and over again and continue on that kind of path. Yeah, that archetype was very in my face, and like it helped me to not be afraid because it was so in my face. And so I think this journey, just like everyone's journey is perfect for them, that's part of the reason my journey was perfect for me. And I guess I wanted to talk about another experience with that and with cycles. I always talk about ceremony. I love ceremony. I love ritual. And I think that part of the reason that I love that is because it's so grounding and also because it reminds you. It's like such a reminder of who you are and your ability to create your own authority, your personal authority over your life and what you can do. And to me, it was like, why am I not doing all these beautiful things? Why am I not blessing my home? Why am I not blessing my food in this way? Or putting my intention into that. Like, why am I not being mindful? Like, that mindfulness piece was really cool for me. And it was interesting because, I started to have almost a ritual around my cycle, and not like any kind of like weird ritual, whatever weird is, weird ritual around it, but just taking it slow and taking the herbs that would help me through my cycle and all of those kinds of things. And I started to notice this pattern. And of my cycle having trouble. And it was because of these rituals, because I was so in tune with my cycle and started to be so in tune with the cycles of the earth and started to be so in tune with the wheel of the year, that I noticed, okay, something is wrong. And I think that's a big problem a lot of women have, is they can't notice that something is wrong because they're not connected to their body and they're not having their own rituals. And so I was like, okay, something is wrong with my period. And we were actually trying to conceive my fourth, Alethea. And like, I was like, oh, I've never had any trouble or issues with this before. Something's not good. And so I ended up going and having this experience with Kaylee. We went to our friend Megan's retreat and I had an experience being drummed for the first time. I had never been drummed. It was a really beautiful experience for me. This is so funny. I ended up like singing this song, like this song just came out of me and it was really healing. But what I've never talked about is what happened the next day during this experience. The next day was the actual retreat. We did some breath work. And during that breathwork experience, it was like I could see all my ancestors asking me, we need your help. We need you to release all of this tension around the womb. There's all these things that have happened to our wombs over the years, and all of these feelings of fear, all these feelings of pain. And I could see that. And they were like, can you help us release this pain? And so I did. I ended up feeling a lot of things. It was a very intense experience for me. And I could just feel all the pain of all these women crying because they had been cut off from their womb space. They were just crying because people had taken so much from them. After that experience, it was like I went through that pain part. And it was like after I had that pain part that I heard the voices again, those voices we talked about, those voices saying, sister, we're waiting for you. Where are you, sister? And this longing for home. And when I heard that, I all of a sudden saw myself running on the stars, and I was running to the Pleiades, which is so funny because to me, like the Pleiades meant nothing to me at this time. Like again, like all these things like don't actually mean anything to me. Like I wasn't like really studying them. They just like came to me. And so I started running to those 7 sisters, and they started talking to me. It was like almost a memory coming back. And they said, we really need you to go down and to help these women. And they called me Star Weaver, what they said. They talked about Star Weaver. I want you to like go down. And of course, I think this is very symbolic. I see it as a really symbolic thing that is happening and teaching me a lot of stuff. And so they just kind of showed me, they're like, we've forgotten, all these women have forgotten and they need you, sister. They need you. You need to remember. You have got to remember because they've forgotten and you've got to go down there and help them. And I don't think I've ever shared, I think I shared this experience with Kaylee, maybe. So this is a really big first. It's like, it feels like a really vulnerable piece for me. So coming out here, but I kind of saw that and I could see the earth and I could see how these pieces were weaving together, how these pieces were coming together. And I needed to keep looking. It again came back to the tree, coming to this wonderful, big, beautiful tree. And, they just told me, don't forget, I need you. We need you. Mother needs you. And so I came out of that literally sobbing, weeping a lot. I mean, Kaylee was there, so she knows. And it was so fascinating because after that experience, my period normalized. I had no more issues with my menstrual cycle. It had done the healing. The healing was all done. And I didn't even think about it. And of course, we got pregnant with Alethea like instantly, very easily, surprisingly. And it just showed like it was like this line had been put back together. Right. And like all of these pieces had been lining up like ducks in a row. And there's so much more, like I can't even explain here of these journeys and these pieces, but I guess I could start to answer a little bit of the question of what are the old ways. But yeah, these experiences are still teaching me and I'm still learning and hopefully I will remember. I'm still remembering and hopefully I will continue to remember and bring it forward. I feel like that was a lot of talking.
That's so good.
No, it was wonderful. A lot of talking. It needed to be said, I think.
I think remembering the old ways is kind of what we're trying to do in the whole of the podcast.
Truth.
There's a lot of that.
I'm just sitting here and there's this feeling of like, yes, yes, yes. And it's hard to talk right now because it's just this, there's this piece, but also this, yeah, let's get to work. And like, as you were speaking about your experiences, I just kept feeling these resonances in like my own body of like, yeah, like this is needed. We are needed. Julie is needed. there's a remembrance that needs to happen. And I've been doing a bunch of research lately, developing another system. Julie knows what I'm talking about. It's a big endeavor. Maybe it'll get finished eventually. But I've been researching a lot of myth that I have not been familiar with, and coming across this concept of innovation and that connection to like Uranus shaking things up, and the innovation of Aquarius, and how all innovation, really good innovation, remembers where it came from and actually draws from memory. It draws from what's remembered, because there are gifts in the past. And if we just stumble blindly or barrel blindly into the future, trying to innovate our way out of whatever mess we're in, we usually end up in more mess. But if it's rooted in memory, which seems to be so much a part of what you've experienced, Julie, is that remembering. Remember what you had no clue you had forgotten because it just was not on your radar. And maybe it's a remembering from pre-being on this earth. And here it is. And you're remembering, and other women are remembering, and men are remembering. People are starting to remember, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it's worth, noting that, like, even though we all have a unique piece, I mean, I guess I just feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So many people have been like bringing forth so much work before this. And not that this is all work. I mean, it's just like right now a visceral experience and like, sharing experiences. But it it's there. It's been there for a long time. And I do think it's coming forward more. And in many ways, thanks to the advent of technology, is helping people a lot. It's that two-sided sword. And I do want to say, like, I think a big thing that I've learned is, like, when you think you know everything, that's when you don't know anything. I think the most dangerous thing we can say is, I know. We know it. We know for sure. Like, absolutely, all these things are when we get stuck. And I don't just mean spiritually. I mean in every single part. Like, when we say I know about technology, when we say I know about science and the medical field and the legal field, when we say I know, that's like one thing. As you're trained and as a lawyer, they always say, never say anything is for sure. Nothing is for sure. It's always either likely or very likely or unlikely. Nothing is for sure. And I think that principle has served me very well because it's made me humble and more teachable. I don't know, like, I'm here with an open palm. I'm trying to learn, and I don't feel like I have all of the answers. That's why I say, like, this is just midrash. This is just me theorizing, pulling some pieces together. This is just my experience. I know that I don't know everything, but I will say, here are some things I think about what the old ways mean, and coming back to ourselves. The old ways mean coming back to your body. I think that's a huge one. Coming back to your body, coming back to your physical cycles. Man or woman, men have a physical cycle also. And as a woman, connecting back into your menstrual cycle, I think that's a big part of the old ways. I'd say the old ways is coming back and honoring the cycles of the earth as well. So the cycles of the moon and how it affects your body, the equinoxes, the solstices, coming back to those things because they remind us how we're all one. They remind us the patterns in our lives. They're checkpoints. I think the old ways is reconnecting back to nature and understanding that we're part of it. And coming back to our gifts, I would say that's a huge part of the old ways, and not being afraid of some of these things that might sound crazy. Like, I think part of the old ways is knowing that you can get knowledge from trees. Like, they can teach you things, and rocks can teach you things, and the water can teach you things. I think the old ways is remembering that everything is the four elements and understanding the four elements. I think remembering the old ways is trusting your inner compass, coming back to your intuition, and following your path and rebalancing structure and flow. I think that's a lot of it. Rebalancing structure and flow, being able to receive and give in this effort, like the ocean, right? Like in this effortless flow, in and out, in and out, in and out. I think the last thing I would say is remembering the old ways is connecting back to the mother, that she's there for you, she's holding you, and remembering like we're all in one giant womb. We're all creating and becoming and constantly held in those ways. And just everything can be an and, it doesn't always have to be an or. That's not to say that there isn't negativity or darkness or things that, might make your life harder, but it is to say that like light and shadow are all one, right? That's a hermetic principle. It's all one. They're just two sides of a different spectrum. And um, letting yourself not be so much in fear, but to let yourself fully experience like life in the living and, having things come from the center outward rather than from the external inward all the time. So I think those are some of the old ways that have been forgotten and we're coming back to.
Such a good recap there. I love it. Thank you so much, Julie. So, what's something that you want to leave everybody with now on this day of celebrating your birthday? And
A special birthday.
Yeah, 33, which is my life path number. And it's my 10th house perfection. So watch out. Career stuff's coming at you. I mean, probably just like bulldozed all my reputation in this whole podcast. That's probably what that's about. What do I want to leave everybody with? I think just that you can remember. The remembering's inside of you. It's all deep inside your bones. It's inside your heart. Learning this way is accessible to everybody. I mean, besides like signing up for that mystery school, all of the learning that I did was literally like, it was free. I just had to do some digging. I just had to ask. For example, like with Mandy, I just had to ask for her help. And I find that this is the practical part of me coming out. I find that like if you ask professors, like if there's something you're interested in and maybe there's someone who has a lot of knowledge that you don't, like a university, or you want to look deeper into something, I do find that professors tend to write you back. They are very excited when people are interested in their work and in like their dissertations and things like that. That if you admire somebody's work, maybe they'll never write you back. Maybe, they're too high and mighty or whatever. I mean, or busy. It's not just about being high and mighty. Sometimes you're just flooded with emails and you miss something. But it is worthwhile to ask. If you need help, if you want someone to help point you in a direction for your self journey, you can ask for that. But I would say, I wanted people to know this can be completely self-sourced. You can self-source it, and you should. Your journey with the feminine should not just be external. It shouldn't be like this external thing that everybody is just telling you. You have to have your own experience. Like you have to ask for these experiences and come to your own conclusions. And it's totally okay if people disagree with any of the conclusions that I'm not even concluded. I'm semi, this is what I think right now. But I'm totally okay with that. There's room to be wrong, and it's okay to be wrong, but don't let being wrong stop you from going on your journey and learning how to self-source knowledge and understanding. That it's at your fingertips. I know we think this is all gate kept and other people know, but I will never learn, but you will. It's literally your direct line to the goddess. So, happy learning.
And happy birthday.
happy birthday. All right. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, then tell Julie happy birthday or just tell her happy birthday anyways. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Bye.